President Trump's new tax and spending bill is, of course, now law. It includes big changes that could affect everything from your paycheck to your retirement plan. And here to break it all down is local financial professional Matt Eilers with Medalist Wealth Financial Weeks. Of course, appreciate you being here to talk about this and break it all down. This is being called one of the biggest tax cuts or tax overhauls in many, many years. In plain terms, what does this do?
Yeah, well, I have my notes with me today because, this is called the Big, Beautiful Bill. It's big. There's a lot going on. There's hundreds of changes. We're unpacking all of these at Medalist Wealth. But when it comes to taxes, we are going to experience just massive tax savings going forward. So, I'd say the very high level when it comes to tax savings is where we have been since 2017 from a tax bracket perspective. Believe it or not, we're in the third lowest tax brackets in American history. So those are going to be extended. So if this bill was not passed, these tax rates were going to go up in 2026. So we are extending now and being able to enjoy the third lowest brackets in American history. So what that means for families across the country as well as retirees is lower taxes. And there's a lot of different things that have been introduced in this bill that are going to allow people to save some more money. When you think of every spring, and I know we talked earlier this spring when it was time to do taxes during tax season, there's something called the standard deduction that's out there, and that is something that you get to deduct a certain amount from your ordinary income on how much you're going to pay taxes on. That has gone up, and then for seniors, that's gone up even more. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of tax savings for families, especially here in West Michigan.
Okay, so let's kind of break some of this down. My first initial question, hearing what you're saying there is are we only going to see these tax savings during tax season time, or are we going to be able to see a day-to-day impact from this bill?
Well, I think it's more or less going to be when you're settling up with the IRS at the end of the year.
Okay.
It's really kind of hard to see because we don't see when we pay taxes to the government so much in the day-to-day. But there's going to be some other things that you're just going to be more aware of. So anyone that is in an environment where their compensation is relying on tips or overtime, there's massive positive changes there as they can deduct up to $25,000 in tipped wages, in overtime pay. So there's going to be a lot of those things that they might be able to, kind of see throughout the year that is going to just be a huge benefit when it comes to tax time, meaning they're not going to have to cut a check as much to the government, or they're going to get a much larger refund.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, very cool.
A lot of people hear tax cuts and they think saving money, having more money that you keep in your bank account.
Yeah.
But is that the case for most Americans? I know that there's a difference based on what tax bracket you're in. So who would be seeing the greatest changes from this?
I think it's really going to hit kind of the middle tax brackets to the most benefit, because those are the tax brackets that have been paying the most at the end of the day. So folks that are in the 22 to 24% tax bracket, they're going to see some great savings. Nobody likes paying taxes. At least I don't. It's kind of a cuss word in my house, the word taxes. But no, everyone's going to feel it across the board, in my opinion. Just from a tax perspective, that savings is out there.
Yeah, I want to briefly touch on this new savings account for kids.
Yeah.
Of course, you and I have talked a lot about teaching your kids about responsible money management early on in their lives. How does this, or how can it be implemented for our children? What are the drawbacks? What are the benefits of this?
Yeah, so we're really unpacking all the details around the new Trump savings account for kids. It's a very cool concept that I was surprised to see as a part of this bill. But essentially, it allows parents, if you've got children that are born I think it's from 2025 to 2028, during that window, that they can deposit up to $5,000 a year, and the federal government is going to give them $1,000 for each kid. And these funds will basically track the U.S. stock market index. And it's just a kid's savings account. When they turn 18, it can be turned into an IRA. You think about the power of some of those dollars going in and anything that a parent could put into it and compounding interest over all of those years. These children, fast forward to when they can get into these IRAs as adults, it could be a very, very large account for them and a huge blessing in the future.
Yeah, what sort of things can people use an IRA for? Just in case anyone's not familiar with that at home, what can that be used for?
Yeah, so an IRA is a retirement account.
Okay.
So that's going to be used for creating your retirement income when you no longer have a job and when you are now, giving yourself your own income. And depending on, what type of situation you're in, there are some ways that you can tap into IRAs early for certain large purchases, like first-time purchase of a home, things of that nature. So there are different stipulations. Who knows what the tax law is going to look like in 20 years when all these babies are buying their first homes? But at the end of the day, it grows tax deferred. So they're not paying taxes on this money in those accounts. That's the whole point of these IRA accounts is the growth. You're not settling up with Uncle Sam every single year.
Okay, very interesting. It is interesting because I don't think that was one of the things that any of us expected to come out of this bill when it was signed.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. For families that are out there living paycheck to paycheck, will there be significant differences that they see in their day-to-day lives from this?
I don't expect that. I think some of the biggest areas is going to be the folks that are on Medicaid or are receiving some form of government or food assistance. There are some changes there. We're digging into it on our end to understand it. I think probably one of the biggest things is there's a new work requirement of 80 hours a month for someone to be able to be receiving Medicaid benefits. So depending on somebody's situation I think there are some scenarios like that could affect some families. And we are working hard to get our minds wrapped around this massive undertaking that's going on. It's a huge bill.
Yeah, it's more than 1,000 pages, so it stands. We have a graphic there right there on the screen for you. So not only, you mentioned no tax on tips, auto loan interest tax deductions. Talk about that. What does that mean?
This is a big one. So this is kind of give and take. So what is going away is the EV, vehicle credit for buying new builds, but what is being introduced is if you buy American-made vehicles, that you can deduct the interest on the loans. So if you get an auto loan at 7% interest rate, the cost of what that is over all the payments, you could deduct, I think, up to $10,000 of that. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that really kind of offsets the EV deduction and enhances it a little bit. So that's, I think, a big deal right there. And then, I think the term has been thrown around SALT for
I saw that. I'm curious as to what that means.
Yeah, it's not table salt. It's it stands for state and local tax.
Okay.
Now that's not really. It allows for that deduction to basically quadruple for the next few years. It's currently at 10,000. It's going to 40,000. That's not going to impact Michiganders as much as folks in high state tax states like New York, New Jersey, California, places like that. So that's really kind of what those other items are.
Interesting. And the final bullet item on that list is business-related tax cuts. Obviously, this probably has to do with more folks that own businesses or maybe are at the top of some businesses. Just briefly overview what that might mean.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we've seen in the bill is that, if a business is going to purchase something like a new property, they can actually deduct 100% of the associated costs for that in the first year rather than having to stretch that out. So small business is going to experience some big wins as it relates to that, because as we know, small business really kind of fuels America, and the taxes that they pay can be very, very expensive. This is going to be more savings for the local businesses right here in West Michigan.
Yeah. Okay. So we've done a lot of laying out what this bill has in it. Again, it's 1,000 or so pages. Lots to digest. You guys are still digesting some of this. With all of these savings that this bill says we're going to have with this, with all of these cuts. What would you recommend? Where do we put this money? What do we need to do with it?
Well, at the end of the day, you're going to have more left in your bank account, and I believe saving for your future, whether that's investing for your needs now or saving for retirement, is a huge way to do that. So, families that are saving for retirement should be looking at making contributions to Roth IRAs if they have the eligibility, should be putting 10 to 15% into their company-sponsored plans to get those matches if they can. They should also, I would say, use some of this extra savings to throttle down any debt they have. Student loans, credit card loans, mortgage payments if the interest rate's high. But at the end of the day, we can see debt fall and we can see savings rise, and that's a good way for the pendulum to swing.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. We appreciate your insight as always. Matt, thank you very much, and of course we'll see you next time.
Great
the
to be
next
here,
time
guys.
you join us next month. We appreciate it.